Hey there, my name is Marla McKenzie and I am Head of Operations at Catalysr. Today we're going to take a quick reality check about startup life, right? So there's this very romantic and sexy and pervasive narrative that, about startups that for the most part, is quite untrue. This romantic story about a founder who woke up one morning with an epiphany and started building something in his garage, and then fast forward 10 years later and he's on the cover of Forbes, and the business is $100 million and all these other big things, right? And listen, just straight up, for the most part, it's untrue. Those things do happen, right? But there's quite a lot that's omitted from that super sexy narrative, right? And so that's what we're going to talk about today. Before you embark on your startup journey, it's really important that you kind of let go of this narrative and reset your expectations. So let's get into it. The first reality check of startup life is that you are going to be working very unconventional work hours. It's just the way it is. So if you're a founder, you'll likely start your startup while also holding down a full-time job, or perhaps a part-time job, or maybe you're even going to uni. And then in addition to that, you have other life commitments. You might have a family, or if you just need to take care of yourself. So you're going to find yourself in a position where you are juggling, you're juggling your kind of new side hustle, your new startup with, all of these other life commitments that you have, right? So initially you'll be working on your startup, most likely be working on your startup outside of normal business hours, right? So if you are going to school or you are working full time, you are already occupied between the hours of 9 and 5, Monday to Friday. That means you'll be working on your side hustle between, and weeknights and also perhaps on weekends. While you're starting out, you'll be able to work on your startup probably exclusively outside of regular business hours. But as your business will scale, you're going to find yourself needing to address requirements from your startup during normal business hours, right? You're going to have to take perhaps some business calls. You're going to have to perhaps answer some emails or make some orders, or, whatever it is that your startup is working on. And then you'll find yourself kind of transferring, thinking, oh, well then, I'll just do that one task for my full-time job later, or I'll do it on Saturday morning or something along those lines. And so, no matter how you slice it, you're probably going to be working outside of normal working hours, for a while in the early stages of a business. Another issue can be that, purely from the industry that you choose, that may just be the nature of the industry. So for example, there are lots of, food delivery platforms, right? And the majority of, people who order food order it at night, right? And restaurants trade well into the night as well. And so you'll find that, you may have to, answer merchant calls or fix up customer orders or something along the lines, well past 5 p.m. and on weekends as well. It really depends. You think about, for example, if you decide to find a job at a startup that works in events business, events often take place at night, straight up. They often take place at night or on weekends. And then purely because that is the industry that you work in, that will dictate your hours. Another reality of startup life is that you are going to have to wear many hats, or all the hats perhaps. And by that I mean you're going to have to do multiple jobs. So, if you're a founder or even a first or second employee in an early stage startup, you'll find yourself doing lots of things that you've never done before, that may not have been a part of your original job description, and some things that you may not particularly enjoy. For example, as a founder, from the get-go, you are wearing the hat of the CEO, the salesperson, the marketing manager, the accountant. In the example, for example, of like an online store, right? An e-commerce business. You're probably also the website designer. you are the procurer, you are the fulfillment manager, and you might also be the delivery person, right? You may start by driving packages yourself to people's houses or driving them to the post office to have them sent via the post, and similarly, if you are a first or second employee, right, there are only so many people in the business that can fulfill the business's needs, right? So inevitably, because there is a disparity, there's more work than there is capacity to do the work. Ultimately, more responsibilities will fall on you, as a founder or as a first or second, employee in an early stage startup, right? I heard this quote or read this quote recently, which I think is very true, which is that startups are started by generalists and they are scaled by specialists. And what that, is referring to, it's referring to employees, managing or wearing many hats, right? Wearing the salesperson hat, the marketing manager hat, and the website design hat, for example. It refers to, CEOs kind of just figuring it out, while also making sales, while also acting as a quasi-accountant and all that kind of stuff. And then once that startup has reached a point where they are making revenue, they're making income, and perhaps they also have, investment, then at that stage they're in a financial position to actually pay for, a specific person and hire a specific person to act as a marketing manager. This can be a really good thing, particularly, for example, if you are, a student, a uni student who's looking to get work experience, or you're fresh out of university, or even, just arrived in Australia. Startups are a really great opportunity because a generalist is an asset to an early stage startup. Someone that can move throughout different areas of the business and sales and marketing and this and that and all these other different, departments, if you will, is an asset to the business. On the flip side, when you've worked in several parts of a business, you've worked in marketing, you've worked in sales, you've done this, you've done that, it gives you the chance to move around a business, get a little bit of experience and a taste of everything, and then ultimately, hopefully, find what you prefer, what your niche, what you would like to continue working in. This is a big one. This is a big truth about startup life, and that is that it's chaos. There's chaos everywhere, right? And by that I mean, startup life is often very disorganized, okay? It's because being organized or doing things right from the beginning is often seen as a low priority because it isn't immediately necessary to have a full-blown database or, a super extensive website or store in order to launch an MVP. In fact, we actively discourage against it. We don't want you to spend all this time building all this infrastructure around a business that you have not yet validated, that you don't know will work yet. But it is a double-edged sword, right? Because, when you build an MVP, we often encourage you to be super scrappy about it, right? You should, don't spend too much time on it because you don't know if people are going to like it. When you do know people like something, then that's when you invest a lot of time and effort into building, a suitable infrastructure around it, right? And so, for a while, right? And then even when you do end up putting, some structure around your MVP, you'll still be scrappy, right? That's just the nature of the beast. But for example, let's just say, you are, you're starting an e-commerce business and you've got this online store where you're starting to sell a product, right? Having just one landing page where a person can buy the product is what is absolutely necessary as an MVP there. But, as you started getting a little bit of traction, let's just say you decide to launch another product, or for example, now you're starting to get, 50 to 100 orders a month or something along those lines, you're going to find yourself dealing with new problems. So, good problems, but problems nonetheless, right? You're inherently going to receive more customer inquiries, right? Are you receiving those customer inquiries to your personal email or your personal mobile number? You don't want that to happen forever, right? You're going to require some more formal accounting systems as well, where you're issuing receipts for people and you are, you can issue your own invoices yourself and you can track expenses that you're spending on stock and on, logistics and shipping and all those other kinds of things, right? You might also reach a point where, your demand is increasing, and for that reason you need to buy more stock, right? And of course, if you are starting to buy more stock, then do you want to spend all of that money out of pocket for it immediately, or is it a better idea at that stage to go to a bank and ask for either a line of credit or some sort of documentation, like a proof of balance, for example, that shows how much money you have in the bank, and then the sales records to back it up, right? You want to have those kinds of things, those ducks in a line, before you are, before it gets to a point where, your business will come to a screeching halt because you have ignored, the inefficiencies that were there from back when it was an MVP. Another thing I think that makes, startup life kind of chaotic is that there's a lot of ambiguity in the startup environment, right? At the beginning of a business, or even when you join as an employee, they're small knit businesses, small companies, small teams. You may or may not know what your income is going to look like in the next month or so, what your revenue is looking like. There are only so many people in the business that can make decisions, and sometimes people are forced to make decisions on their own or without all of the information that they would otherwise prefer to have available to them. It really depends, and ultimately, there's a lot of ambiguity in the startup environment, and for that reason, it can be made a little bit more chaotic. It makes a chaotic situation just a little bit more, exciting, if you will. Another harsh truth about startups is that they require a lot of discipline and focus. So, at the beginning, during the infancy of a business, as a founder, you might have this image of what, your business and your life will look like, further down the road, right? Like your business will be in the top 100 on the ASX, or, you'll be a celebrity CEO with, without a care in the world, and, your business is making $1 million of revenue in a week, and you've got these 27 different products and services and all of that kind of stuff, right? And we need to be honest with ourselves. 90% of startups fail. 10% of the ones that fail, which is 90%, 10% fail within the first year. And a further 70% fail between years 2 and 5. And of the startups that do succeed, only 1% reach unicorn status, so a valuation of $1 billion. Now, there are loads of really interesting statistics on inbroker.com. I'll include the link in our bio down below. So all in all, the likelihood of that little fantasy happening is low. It's not impossible, but it is low. And another thing to take into account, like I'm not just trying to kill your hopes and dreams here. Another thing to take into account, right, is that, statistics don't just happen, right? And like in this context, these statistics are a summary of the outcomes of decisions made by founders and staff, right? And decisions made by you will dictate which group of statistics, the startups that fail or the startups that succeed, your startup will end up in, right? You must remain focused on what people are willing to pay for, even if that deviates from what you originally intended or what you were originally hoping the business would look like. It's tempting to build a business around a problem, that we are passionate about. And, it is important for there to be passion behind the problem that you're trying to solve. But ultimately, what will help your business succeed is how well it works for other people, right? Another reason why you must remain focused is that as your business grows, these little side opportunities will present themselves. Partnerships, for example, will come up as you talk to customers or staff or, other business partners. And you need to ask yourself whether or not a partnership with that organization, will contribute towards what you're trying to achieve with the business at that time. And also you need to ask yourself if their core is relevant. So for example, it makes sense for a restaurant to partner with a delivery platform because it means that they will, it's a sales channel. They'll make more sales from people who want their food but don't want to come in person to get it. It's a sales channel, for their food, for the new customers. There's some marketing value there as well. But for example, Catalysr is a startup accelerator for migrants and refugees, right? Does it make sense for us to partner with an airline just because people come on planes to Australia? Not really, right? It is very flattering when larger companies or larger brands that were already familiar with reach out to you, because you think, oh my God, me, well, how could they want to work with little old me and my startup and stuff like that, right? So you do need to remain focused and ask yourself, try to look past the flattery and ask yourself how relevant is the connection. Does their core, align with mine? Do their values align with mine? And then also ask yourself whether or not, these people, this organization has something to offer you. Like, is it going to actually benefit you? Now, we have another video on understanding and negotiating partnerships on our YouTube channel, and I'll also link that one down below. So, last but not least, working in a startup or starting a startup really is an emotional roller coaster. There's ups, there's downs, there's fails, there's wins. It really is both ends of the spectrum and potentially anywhere in between. For example, if you're a founder and you're just starting out, you will be launching an MVP, right? And so you'll be launching an MVP and you're going to put it in front of customers and you're going to be really excited and really hoping that they like it, and then they don't. And so then you kind of take that disappointment and that rejection a little bit, you go home, you fix it a little bit, and you're really excited to, show them your MVP again, and they don't like it, still don't like it. And then, you might do that 2 or 3 times, and then eventually, you put something new in front of them and they say, no, that totally works. I love it, this and that, right? And so, it's especially right in that, like in the beginning of, a founder's journey or even an early stage startup's journey, you really take that to heart. You take that personally, and you can't help but feel disappointment, feel some rejection, and then also celebrate the wins, which you absolutely should. There's lots of highs and there's lots of lows to the whole journey, no matter if you're a founder or if you're an employee. Some days you will come home feeling like you absolutely killed it. You knocked it out of the park. You ran a marathon. You hit a home run. all of the possible, all the possible sayings, right? And there are other days where, you'll go home and you'll think, I can't, I just want to, have an early night, or I just want to go out and have dinner with my friends, or I just like to sleep in on a Saturday morning and not have to worry about, my business or something along those lines, right? And you'll feel very tired, especially if you're working, for example, all these, unconventional hours, or, if you had a really kind of hectic day, or, if you felt like things didn't go the way you would have liked them to. Ultimately in, whether you're an employer or you're a founder, you're going to fail quite a bit in a startup environment, and you're probably going to fail more than you will win, right? But, we encourage you to do that, to fail as much as you can and as fast as you can so that you can get to the win quicker, hopefully. But it is disappointing. It's disappointing when you fail, and it's amazing when you win. There really are, lots of highs and lows. And ultimately, when I look back at, my experience with, with my previous employer, I do look back on it very fondly and think, wow, that was crazy, but it was a really great time. So, ultimately, it is really, starting a startup or even joining an early stage startup is the journey of a lifetime. But it is absolutely an emotional roller coaster. So it's something you should definitely keep present before you embark on that journey.